Athena, designer and stylist, and in this video I'm going to be teaching how to make scrunch gloves. This is the second video in the glove series, and in the last video I taught basic gloves. You don't need to have seen that video, this completely stands on its own. This technique is one step above the drag queen classic of tracing a part of your body. We're just gonna add to that a little bit with some math. And before you get scared about the concept of doing math, I know that's something that a lot of people find intimidating when it comes to sewing. We're going to be using tape measure math, which is basically a physical way of solving the problem of having to do math. So some of you might be familiar with this or have seen me do this in the last video, but essentially you take your tape measure, you have the number that you need to divide or multiply. So let's say it's 13. So then you want to know what half of 13 is. You fold that tape measure in half, and now you know that half of 13 is 6.5, right? So if you want to know a quarter of 13, then you fold that in half again, and now you know that it's 3.25. So you want to know what's 13 times 2. Take your 13, fold this way, and now you know that that's 26. So that's the gist of tape measure math. You can really get pretty advanced with it as long as you are good at folding. When I say this project is easy, that's obviously a relative term because we all come to sewing and crafting with different ability levels. So feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about how to make this project more accessible, or let me know if you have tips yourself. So other than your tape measure and a calculator, to do this project, you're gonna need about half a yard of fabric. I insist that you use a fabric with a 4-way stretch. So what that means is you might have a really cool fabric that you like this stretch vinyl, for example, but this fabric stretches this way, but not this way. So that's a 2-way stretch. So you need to make sure you have something that stretches in both directions. So today I'm using this yellow power mesh, and it has a really nice stretch in both directions, which is going to make it easier to work with for this pattern since it's fairly simple. So in addition to your fabric, you're going to need a matching thread color, your scissors, your sewing machine, pencil, piece of paper, and that's pretty much it. So let's grab our materials and get started.
Measure the length of your arm from bicep to wrist and bicep to elbow, the circumference of your wrist, elbow, and then bicep. Now lay out a large piece of paper and draw a straight line, which will be your fold line. Then rest your pinky against the line and spread your fingers wide, tracing your hand. Now divide your wrist measurement by 2 and mark that at the wrist of your hand tracing. Measure across your palm, divide by 2 and mark that on your hand tracing, and then do the same for your knuckles. Now divide the knuckle line by 4 and mark that along the line. Use your markings to refine your hand tracing, making the fingers a bit wider, and then taper the points of your fingers. Now I'm multiplying my bicep to wrist length by 1.5 because I want my gloves slightly scrunchy, but you can multiply your arm length by 2 for a scrunchier effect or even more. You will do the same with your bicep to elbow measurement and mark that on your line. Now divide the circumference of your elbow by 2 and mark that perpendicular to your elbow point on the fold line. Do the same for your bicep circumference. Mark it perpendicular on your bicep point on the fold line and then connect all 3 points. I'm very sorry that I cut off the bicep edge of my pattern on the camera, but I'm about to adjust it so that you can see. And so you can see what I've done here is I've rounded off the edge of that line so that it ends on a right angle. Now go ahead and cut out your pattern and then lay it down on your folded fabric. Do not add seam allowance. I am pinning directly into my table because I have a corkboard surface underneath this outer layer, but you can use weights or you can just hold it down with your hand. And then I'm using a soft pencil to trace all the way around the pattern. Use any marking tool of your choice, but the point is to get a nice tracing of your pattern all the way around. Pin the fabric around your markings, but not on the traced lines, and then cut generously around your glove, leaving lots of excess fabric. Repeat this process for your other glove as well.
So when you take this to your machine, it is really important that you do not cut out these seam allowances. Having a larger piece of fabric to manipulate, especially around these tiny corners and curves, is going to be life-changing. And this power mesh that I chose for these gloves is particularly difficult to work with because it's so soft and slippery. If you use a heavier weight fabric, it's going to be a little bit easier, but this is going to scrunch really beautifully when it's finished.
Stitch around your curves carefully, doing your best not to stretch the fabric as you sew. When you reach corners, insert your needle into the fabric and lift your presser foot. Make a few stitches in the ditch between your fingers and rotate again.
Okay, so now that this is all stitched, it's finally time to cut that excess material away. And we're going to get about 1/8 of an inch away from that seam line when we cut, trying to get as close as possible without cutting that zigzag stitch and without leaving any holes big enough that it could just tear. But we're going to get really close up in there. So have some really sharp scissors. You're going to want to make sure that the point of your scissors are sharp. You can use a smaller pair of detail scissors to get into the fingers. I'm going to live dangerously and just cut them with my shears. Now that the excess is trimmed away, it's time to turn your glove right side out, which is my favorite part, because you can just slip your hand in there and turn it like that. So now we're going to check to see how the fit is. Okay, so right off the bat, pretty much all of my fingers need to be a little longer. And so we're looking at 1/2 inch on the pinky and then about 1/4 on the other two. I think that my wrist seam here, this could honestly be like this, I can take out like 2 whole inches here. And then, you know, these are like scrunch gloves after all. So I think this whole thing just needs to be a lot tighter. I'm gonna take out, you know, maybe like 4 inches up at the top. All right, this is pretty extensive, so I'm gonna go ahead and mark it. And I think part of the reason why, I mean, this looks great, don't get me wrong, but I think we can make it better. And part of the reason why it turned out this way is because the power mesh. It's so stretchy and so flimsy that it's not as tight of a fit as it would be if I was making stretch vinyl gloves. And so if you are going to use a stretch vinyl to do this, I potentially recommend copying this pattern that you already have, putting that to the side, and then making this one in mind that this is going to be power mesh and really stretchy, lightweight knit pattern for your scrunch gloves. But it looks great. We're almost there.
If you got your glove perfect on the first try, then congratulations. But if not, and you are like me and you need to do some alterations, then go ahead and mark your alterations onto your glove. In my case, there were a lot of alterations because this fabric was even stretchier than I expected it to be. And once I have those alterations, I'm also going to mark them on my paper pattern so that I will know for next time. And as I mentioned, this fabric was particularly stretchy, so I'm going to mark this pattern as being specifically for mesh, because this pattern might not work as well with a less stretchy fabric. So cut your alterations, cut the excess seam allowance away, and it is time to turn and try on your glove again.
All right, now that our alterations are complete, let's try it out and see if everything worked. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased. It's perfect. You might not get it on the first try. You might have to do a second round of alterations. And if I was being nitpicky, I'm sure that there are more things that I could do to get in here, but I'm pretty pleased with how my fingers fit. I'm pretty pleased with the level of scrunch that I'm getting on the glove. It's not too tight at the upper arm. I'm really happy. But if you have to do a second round of alterations, don't worry about it. Just keep working at it until you're happy. And that's how you make a scrunch glove. If you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you did, please like and subscribe. I'm a really new channel, so every single subscriber I get means a lot to me. If you want to see more tutorials in 60 seconds or less, head on over to my TikTok where I'm at Athena Lawton. I'm also on Instagram as at Athena Lawton. And on a final note, gloves are like a hug for your arm, so give yourself some glove self-love and hug your arms. See you next time.